Hi there, I'm Michelle the Painter, and this is Paint and Sip at Home. Alright, so today I'm going to be painting Spring is in the Air, and I'm sipping on some black tea. And if you enjoy this process, I do hope that you like and subscribe to my channel, and that you also check out my Patreon page where you're going to find additional painting perks. So let's get painting and let's get sipping. Alright, so for my materials today, I'm going to be using a stretched and primed 16 by 20 inch canvas. If you're painting along with me, you could certainly switch up the size, but that's what I'll be using. I'm going to be using acrylic paint today. My colors are titanium white, ultramarine blue, fluorescent pink, green oxide, chrome yellow, burnt umber, which I like to call brown, and Mars black. And of course you can switch up those colors if you'd like, but that's what I'll be using. For my tools today, I'm going to be using a white piece of chalk for some drawing, and then I have 3 brushes from my personal brush line, which is Michelle the Painter brushes. I have a 3/4 inch wide flat bristle brush. I have a number 8 round synthetic brush, and I have a number 1 round synthetic brush, and I will refer to these as small, medium, and large as we go through the painting process. And of course you can switch those up as well if you'd like to. If you're painting along with me, you'll probably want to have a cup of water for washing your brushes, as well as a paper towel for drying your brushes. And down below this video, in the video description, I will be providing you with a few additional resources that can help you throughout your painting process. One of them is a link where you could purchase the same exact paint kit that I'm using, from the same size and type of the canvas to the same type of paints and brushes and all the good stuff in between. So that's there. There's also a link where you could download a free image of the final painting. So you can print that and use it as visual reference as you go through the painting process. And there's also written step-by-step instructions down there for you as well. And that's all we're going to need today. Alright, so what we're going to do for the first step is we're going to be painting the sky. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush. The colors that I'm going to be using are blue and white. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a light blue sky color that we'll be using for the majority of the sky, but we'll be making it a little bit lighter as it comes down to the bottom of the canvas. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush to paint, but I'm going to use my medium brush to pre-mix a custom light blue color. So I have pre-mixed my color right here so you can see where I'm headed. How I got there is blue and white. So I'm using, I would say, about 2/3 blue and 1/3 white to get to this shade of light blue. Yours doesn't have to be exactly as mine. You can certainly make it lighter or darker or more vibrant, whatever works for you, but that's about where I'm headed with my light blue color. Once you've got the shade that you would like, you can just put the whatever mixing tool away, and then I'm taking out my large bristle brush. I'm going to start at the top of my canvas with that light blue color. I'm going to be using a left to right brush stroke to get the paint on, or to apply the paint. Once I've got it, I would say about 1/3 of the way down my canvas with this color in through here, I'm going to start introducing white as well. So that's going to give me an opportunity to create a gradient as it goes down towards the lower portion of the sky. I use this gradient a lot because when I'm looking out in nature and I'm looking at the sky, it seems to a lot of times just get lighter as it goes down towards the horizon. So I incorporate it a lot on my natural outdoorsy type of paintings. So I'm about a little bit past 1/3 of the way. Now I'm going to start picking up white on my dirty brush, and I'm going to be intermingling it with that blue, that light blue that I had already put on the canvas, and I just go back and forth until they're nice and blended. And then every time I go down further down the canvas, I'm just going to keep picking up white on my dirty brush. And what this does, it's going to release the remnants of the light blue that are within my bristles, and it helps me to create a nice natural gradient as I'm working my way down towards the bottom of the canvas. If you end up going all the way white by the time you're down at the bottom, that's totally fine. It can still have a little bit of light blue in it. Whatever works for you is totally fine. And if it's not super smooth of a gradient, you can just consider there to be clouds or something along that line. We're going to be doing some out of focus kind of bokeh dots or little representation of out of focus flowers and foliage in the background. So even if your gradient isn't perfect, don't worry about it, because a lot of this is going to be covered by the portrait of the little girl. We've got a big huge flower that's going to be coming into place, and we also have out of focus little dots that we're going to be doing in a minute. So this does not have to be a perfect gradient, but once I get it done, what I like to do is I'll just kind of go back and forth, left to right, to get it to blend in as much as I want it to. And then once you've got this done, if you wanted to do a second coat, you certainly could. I'm not going to be doing a second coat because I know how much other information I'm going to be putting on top of this. So that second coat is just going to, in my opinion, be wasted paint because I'm going to be putting so much other stuff on top of this. So once I've got this done, I am going to be using my piece of chalk for the next step. So you can put your large brush away. Oh no, actually, yeah, we're going to use a piece of chalk, sorry. We're going to do our little bit of our drawing for the next step. So you can put this large brush away, take out your chalk, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to be drawing an outline for our girl and our flower. I'm going to be using my chalk. You could certainly use any drawing utensil that's comfortable to you. I do recommend before we start this step that you make sure that your canvas is dry. So this is that time where you get to take an extra long break if you'd like to. Or you can find some kind of fun fanning method to get it dry. Or you can do as I did and just whip out a blow dryer and get it dry really quickly that way. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be guiding you through a series of markers. We're going to connect those markers, kind of like connect the dots. We're going to be creating some really nice, simple, basic shapes that we'll be able to utilize during the painting in process. So we don't need to overcomplicate this with lots of little tiny detail. We just need some nice kind of like block-in type of sections. I am going to be doing a little bit more work on the background on the future step, but the girl is so large that I wanted to make sure we had her in place first so we're not over painting the canvas as we go through the process. So what I'm going to first do is find myself the center of my canvas, which I already have marked off right in through here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make some corresponding dots around that, and then we'll be connecting our dots. So this is the center of my canvas. What I'm going to do from here is I'm going to go up about 2.5 inches and make myself another marker in through here. Then what I'm going to do is come back to the center and go to the right about 1 inch. And I'm thinking that as I'm getting down towards this bottom part of the lighter area, this white chalk might be a little bit too light. So I'm going to switch to a darker color chalk so you can see it better on camera, but you could certainly stick with white chalk on your end. So I've got my center. I've got up about 2 inches for one mark and over to the right about 1 inch. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come all the way down to the bottom, straight like in the center of my canvas as well. So there's going to be a marker right in through here. And then I'm going to come up from that about, I would say about 3 inches, 3.5 inches, and then over to the right about 2 inches. So this is going to end up more to the right than this dot here. So you want to make sure that that's a little bit further to the right than that dot in through there. And then I'm going to go up into the top left-hand corner of my canvas. I'm going to come down or over to the right about 2 inches and then down about 2.5 inches. That's going to be my next marker. Maybe that one can be made in white so you can see that up in the dark section. There we go. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect these 4 dots. So 1, 2, 3, 4 with a long, gentle arcing line. So I'm going to take it from here and I'm going to take it in through here. I'm going to just continue a long arcing line like this. I'm going to make sure that I hit my dots like that, and then just continue this. Let me switch chalk so you can see it down in this lighter section like this. So it's just a real gentle kind of arcing type of a line. I'm going to now connect this mark in through here with a little bit of a inward type of a curve. So I'm going to take it from here and then just kind of bring it in just a little bit. And this little, if you have a little chalk residue, don't worry about that. We'll take care of that in a little bit. So that works in through there. Up here, I'm going to come down my canvas maybe about 3 inches and over to the edge of my canvas, right in through here. I'm just going to connect these two with a diagonal line. So what we just did is kind of made the basic shape of her hat, her head, her face, and down into her neck. So this is going to give us just a nice simple area to build everything off of. We're going to start with her hat, and then we're going to work into her face. So if this is my first marker that I made in through here, so I went up from here, and this is my first marker, I'm going to go about almost halfway between that and here. So if this is about halfway, I might be a little bit to the right of that. So somewhere in here, let me switch color chalk, somewhere in through here is going to be my first marker. I'm going to then almost split the difference between here and here, make another marker. So right about there. This is going to be the little top rim part of her hat. We'll put it sticking up there in a minute, but I'm going to give us two end points to meet. So we're going to come down to the bottom of the canvas. In the bottom right hand corner, we're going to go over about 2 inches, somewhere in this vicinity, make a little bit of a marker. I'm going to come up this left hand side about 1 inch, make a marker. We're going to make several marks going up this left hand side. Then I'm going to come up from that about 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch, make another marker, and then I'm going to go almost halfway up my whole canvas. So this is about halfway, oh maybe this is about halfway up my canvas. I'm about 3 inches below that is my next marker. Something like that. So you should have 1, 2, 3, and then another marker in through here. I'm going to now make a couple of markers up in through here. I'm going to go directly up from here, almost to the top of my canvas, and then over to the right, just a little smudge, so right in through there. And then up here, I'm going to go up maybe about 2 inches, and to the right, about 1 inch. Now we're going to connect our dots. So I'm going to take this one here, connect it to here, like that, with a little bit of an arc. I'm going to connect this dot to this dot to this dot with a long kind of little kind of wavy line. So I'm going to take this like this and bring it, kind of dip it down a little bit and bring it back into there. I'm going to now go from this dot in through here, or this kind of intersection. I'm going to connect that to this guy down in through here with a long wavy line. So this is actually, I'm going to hold that thought. I'm going to take this dot and connect it to this one in through here. Not this one, this one. So I'm going to take it from here, make a long wavy line, switch my colors of chalk so you can see it like this in through there. That works. And then I'm going to go from about midway, right about here, and I'm going to make another line that's going to connect here to this little guy in through here. This will all make sense in a second. And then I'm going to connect this last dot to here and here with a long, again, kind of wavy line. Think of this as the rim of the hat, which is what we're making right now. Oops, I need to give you white chalk up here to about here, switch my color of chalk, and bring it down like this. So what we just did was, I'm going to grab a little bit of water on my brush so I can erase a little bit of this chalk mark so you can see what I just did. What we did was we created her hat. So this is the exterior rim. This is a ribbon that we're going to be putting on the hat. And this is kind of the space between the ribbon and the rim, right in through here. And then this is the top part of the hat. So next what we're going to do is we're going to create a section where her hair is going to go. So as I'm going to be painting this later, my hair is going to be laying over the skin of the face, but for painting purposes and to get the colors blocked in, I'm going to just do a block section for the hair, and we will get those two sections, the hair and the face, to look more realistic as we go through the painting process. But right now I'm just going to put a big block section. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come from this area in through here to the left of that about 2.5 inches, give myself a marker. And I'm going to take this from up in the hat I'm going to come down the hat just a little bit, maybe about an inch, inch and a half, or about halfway between here and here. Give myself a marker. I'm going to come down this line about, oops, I had wet paint in my hand. Where did that come from? Hold on. That must have came from my palette or something. Got stuck on my pinky somehow. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come down this line about 2.5 inches. So you just don't, you want to kind of be conscious of how far down you bring this, because if you bring it too far down, you're going to cover up like where her eyes and stuff are going to go. So maybe about halfway between here and here, or almost halfway between here and here will give you that marker, or about an inch up from that. I'm going to connect this with a little bit of a bump. This is going to be the bump for her bangs. And then as I connect here to here, I'm going to kind of give a little inward curve to it. Something like this. Change color of chalk. Something like that. So this whole section, again, I'm going to take a little bit of water on my brush to erase this guideline so you can see what we just did. We created the section for her hair. Now we got to create her face. So her face, what we've got to do is kind of give a chin, a mouth, and a nose. And I'm going to bring it all off of this line in through here. Her nose is going to be about right where the center part of my canvas is, somewhere in through here. I'm going to come out from that, maybe about 1.5 inches. Somewhere in through here is going to be kind of a little tip of her nose. I can, while I'm just here, I can connect here with a little bit of a slope into here. That's all I need to do for that part. And then for her chin, where we put this marker in through here, down in through here, if I come about, I would say almost halfway between the nose and here, well, maybe about 1/3 of the way, somewhere about in through here, and come out just past where my nose is, somewhere in through here, I can give myself a little bit of a marker. That's going to be the farthest part out of her chin. So I can take that and connect it to this marker in through here with just a little bit of a curve. Something like that, and get it to naturally just kind of transition into this curve in through here. Now what I need to do is I need to put the bottom of her nose and her 2 lips. So I'm going to take this and I'm just going to kind of give myself a couple of bumps. You'll see how I'm going to do this. Maybe white chalk. I don't know which color chalk you're going to be able to see better, so we'll start with some white. I bring it in like this just a little bit, and when doing the lips, I'm just doing these very subtle little bumps, because the lips are going to be more created with paint than the actual bump itself. So it's really kind of subtle when you're just doing the profile of that. So that's going to be her profile. You could even take a little bit of water. I know my brown chalk is going to bleed into my paint, so this might not erase as well, but you can get the gist. That's good. Let me just take a little paper towel to get this off so you can see the profile of her. There we go. You can even erase that little center dot. I did that with pencil, so maybe that won't erase as well. It will with an eraser. There we go. And then I'm going to do my outline for my flower. So I want my flower to kind of be in front of her face a little bit and cover up a little tip of her nose and a little bit of her forehead. You don't have to, but I want it to look like she's going right, her nose is going right into the flower itself. I'm going to be doing like a tulip type of a flower. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first put the stem in place. So I'm going to go about halfway between her bangs, this bump on her bangs, and the edge of my canvas. So somewhere in through here is going to be where I'm going to have that stem. And I'm just going to curve it like this off the edge of my canvas. Something like that. I'm going to have a tulip, so a tulip is going to be rounded at the base and then can kind of flip out at the edges when it's nice and open and bloomed. So I'm going to just give myself a couple of curves and bring it all the way down in through here with a little kick out at the bottom. And then same thing over here. I'm going to bring it like this. And right before I hit that bangs, that's where I'm going to kick out that first little petal like this. And like this. And now from here to here, I can do a whole bunch of little kind of rippled edges of the petals that we can identify later in a more distinct way. But I want one to kind of pop over her nose. So I'm going to just kind of take this and give myself a couple of little bumpy petal edges. I'm going to take this one. I'm going to have a little piece of the sky between the flower and her face. So I'm going to just kind of bring this like this and maybe overlap her her forehead just a little bit. And then so I don't get confused, I'm going to take and erase that little tip of her nose and then this little piece of her forehead. And that's all I'm going to be doing. It's as simple as that. So once you've got this done, we are actually going to be using our large brush for the next step. So you can certainly make any modifications. You can tweak it as much as you want, but once you get it done, you can put your drawing utensil away, take out your large brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to be painting some bokeh dots. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush. So I'm coining the term bokeh dots as out of focus little colored spots, which are going to represent, maybe there's some of these tulips out in the distance that are just out of focus, or we're seeing little peekaboo spots through foliage that's giving us little bright pops of sunshine. We've got a really close-up view on her and the flower, so anything behind her is going to be out of focus, and I wanted to add some nice kind of harmony through the colors, so I'm choosing to make my out of focus dots in the background with my flower color, which is going to be pink. I'm going to be using pink, my light blue, and white to form these out of focus marks in the background. So I'm going to be using my bristle brush. I'm never going to have a lot of paint on my brush, and I'm going to be applying it in a circular type of brush stroke. Now I did my outline first, so again, don't overpaint the image. But when you're doing this, if you want to put one of these marks really near or making it look like it's behind the flower, don't feel that you can't just bump into that and paint a little mark right around it, because we will be able to, if you bump into your outline, you will be able to modify that later. So what I'm going to first start with is a tiny bit of my light blue and white. So when I say tiny bit, I'm just talking an itty bitty bit on the tip of my brush, and then I'm going to start doing these circular type of marks. So something like that. I just move my brush in a circle. So that's going to give me these out of focus type of appearance. You can do any combination of white, light blue, and pink. I just picked up a little bit of white, so I have a lighter mark in through here. So like in through here, maybe I want this one to go look like it's going a little bit behind. So I can just bump right into my outline and allow for it to look like it's going behind. You could do that as many times as you want to. I'm going to now pick up a tiny bit of pink paint on my dirty brush. I'm not going to wash my brush throughout this process. So like right there, I just bumped right into my outline. I'm so okay with that because it's going to again make it look like it is behind it. And I'm just kind of rubbing these until it's almost a dry, like I'm almost just rubbing it until the paint is nice and dry. That makes it look nice and soft. And then you can overlap these as well. So if I'm going through here and I want this to kind of overlap on top of this one, I just kind of put a little bit in through there. You don't need to overdo this. This is just one of those subtle background effects that are going to give you a lot of, it has a big effect with doing a very little bit of work. So right now I'm switching back and forth between my white, my light blue, and my pink. And I'm just going to keep alternating those colors. If you do one and you're like, whoa, that was too much, just go ahead and pick up some white and you can get it to go a little bit duller. You can get them to go on top of each other. So it's really a fun process to do these because you can really just be carefree with it. You can have them look as vibrant as you want or as subtle as you want. So depending on your, visual preference, that's going to kind of steer you into how many of these you want to incorporate in your painting. And then I just want to kind of put a couple more in through here. And you could also use a smaller brush too. If I a lot of times for these little bokeh dots will use a smaller bristle brush. I have a 1/4 inch small bristle brush that I use quite often for these, but I knew that I had a pretty large space that I was going to be working with today. See, I'm debating right now. I'm like, do I do any more of these? I knew I was going to be doing a pretty large space, so I was okay with using my larger brush. But one of the tricks is to overlap these little marks, and that'll make them look a little bit more realistic and lifelike. So once I've got this done, I'm going to be using my medium brush for the next step. So you can, and if you had any unpainted like little spots of your sky, you could always just pick up a little bit more of that light blue and just finish up any of those little spots with your sky blue. And then I'm going to be putting this brush away, taking out my medium brush, and getting ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to be painting the base coat on the hat, the face, and the flower. I'm going to use my medium brush. The colors that I'm going to use are brown, pink, yellow, white, and green. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be creating a custom color for my hat and my skin, and then I'll be using pink for the flower and green for the stem to start. I'm going to create my custom colors first, and then we'll just kind of go from there. So I'm going to be doing my hat in the ribbon is going to be like a pinky purple color, but the actual hat itself is going to be just like a canvas summery mesh type of a color. So I'm going to go for this color in through here as my base coat. How I got to that was mostly brown and yellow, but I also used a touch of pink and then white. The white is going to obviously make it as light as I want. The brown and the yellow is going to give it kind of a golden tan type of color to it. And then of course you could adjust it to whatever color you want. Maybe you want yours more yellow or more pink, or maybe you want a blue hat. You can do it whatever color you want. So that's where I'm headed for that. The base coat for my skin, I'm just washing and drying my brush here. The base coat for my skin is going to be made up of those same colors, which is pink, brown, yellow, and white. However, I'm using much more pink than I did here and less yellow. So I've got pink, a little bit of yellow, brown, and white. And all skin tones are going to have like a brownish base to them, and then you can just tweak it to be either more golden of a color or darker of a color or lighter of a color from there. I like to a lot of times use my own skin tone as kind of a barometer as to where to start. That's a little bit too pink for me, so I'm going to add more brown and white to it. But you could certainly use any reference that you want, but for me, using my own skin tone helps me to kind of at least get a believable start to the color. And then if I want to make it lighter or darker or any shade difference, I can certainly do that. And I'm just going for what's going to be the main color of the skin, and then we'll add highlights and shadows and all that good stuff. So this is where I'm going to start with the face. Is my is the custom skin tone that I created. So I'm just putting that on my brush. I don't need to do any fancy brush stroke at this point. I'm just really looking to get a base color on here, and then again we'll do all kinds of additions to it later. I'm bringing it right up to where it's going to be meeting the hair, but I'm going to kind of give it like a little bit softer of a edge, so it's not just one straight line. But when I go on the edge of the face itself, like in through here where it's up by that flower, that I will give it a nice clean edge where it meets that flower and where it meets the air itself. And if you're going about this and you say, "Oh, I feel like I want my nose bigger or smaller," you don't have to follow your chalk mark exactly. You can always modify that chalk. You can always erase it. You can make it, paint over it. You can do whatever you need to do. So as you're going through this, oops, I just went outside my line a little bit. As you're going through this, if you feel that, you know, your chalk or your guideline was not positioned exactly perfectly, then, you know, just leave it and then adjust it however you feel is necessary. I'm just slowing down so I don't make this too big. And sometimes leaving a little bit of that, of your guideline evident along these exterior edges helps to make you not extend that, that object larger than you intended it to be. Sometimes as we're painting, we paint over that initial sketch or guideline, and then we don't know where our barriers are anymore, and we may make that object larger without even realizing it. We just keep painting bigger and bigger and bigger, and by the time we're done, it's like, wow, how did that chin get so darn big? It wasn't that big in my drawing, and it's because we've lost that that guideline, and we don't know where that barrier is anymore, and we just keep painting. So it's very easy to do that. So if you know, find that that happens to you a lot, one of the tricks you can do is just leave a little bit of your outline, and then when you're really comfortable that you've got it all positioned where you want and you're not afraid to go any bigger, or that you've made it the right size, that's when you can start erasing those guidelines or making them disappear. So that's good for me. I'm going to wash, and I know her nose would have been underneath there, so it looks a little funny right now without that flower there, but that's okay. So I'm washing and drying my brush. I'm going to paint my hat right now, so I'm going to be using that custom tan. Well, we're going to call this the skin color, and then this will be custom tan. So or gold yellow. I don't know what color I want to call this. I'm just going to call it a tan color, even though it looks very yellow next to my skin. But I'm going to bring it through this whole section in through here and right up to what's going to be the ribbon section, and all the way up to this area in through here, right up in through there. Felt like that should have been just a little bit wider to make sure that her head fits in it, so I just bumped that out a little bit, and that's exactly what I was talking about. Like, I see where her forehead is here, and I'm like, maybe this could use to be just a little bit out further. You want to make sure her head can fit in it. I'm going to go ahead and do this section in through here. So this is the rim of the hat in through here with this same color, and bringing it right to my chalk mark, all the way to the edge in through here. I'm going to save her hair for later so we can overlap that hair onto the skin, and we'll have an easier time painting that skin without working around the hair. So we'll tackle the hair later. I'm going to go right up to this area in through here. And again, don't worry about a perfect coverage at this point, because you're going to be adding some fun highlights and shadows and all kinds of good stuff onto this hat later. You could even add some fun decorative elements like flowers or anything else that you want. I'm also noticing as I'm getting to this area right in through here, I didn't make my hat go around her head. I'll show you what I mean in a second here once I get this colored in. So this little section right in through here, I need it to go around her head. So I'm going to just bring down a little line like this. I'm going to color that in like a shadowy color later, but I forgot to give the other edge of the hat, so I just made a little line in through there. I'm going to color this section in right here with my dirty brush and brown paint. So I'm picking up brown paint on my dirty brush. This is going to be a little shadowy area between the ribbon and the rim. So this is brown plus my golden tan, something like this. And then once I've got this section done, and you could, if you need to leave a little space between those two, you certainly could, so you know which is which, but mine is dark enough so I can tell which section belongs to which. And then I'm going to wash and dry my brush. I'm going to tackle my stem with some green paint. So I washed and dried my brush, putting green paint on my brush, and I'm just painting my stem like this. I am going to also be painting the start of the little leaves that come on this flower. If I can get this on here. I guess I can't talk and paint at this section at the same time. So something like that. I'm going to take this green paint and I'm just going to bring up some fun little green pieces coming up in this direction and then over on the other side as well. These are going to kind of wrap around this whole stem, but I'm just going to bring some fun little pieces up right now. And then I'm going to wash and dry my brush. And I'm going to paint the flower base coat is going to be pink. So I'm going to just take pink paint. This is going to be really transparent, so you're going to be able to see some of the sky behind it. Don't worry about that at this point. We're going to be, like I said, we've got lots of steps to go. This just helps to get us started. I know also that this flower I'm doing, I'm going to want to have like a stripy type of a not texture, but the colors on the petals are going to have a little bit of what I'll call a stripiness to them. So as I'm doing this, I'm using a directional brush stroke, just bringing all my kind of brush strokes kind of from the center up from where the stem is, and then just kind of down towards the edge of the petals. And that's going to help when I go to add the other colors on top of it. That'll help to just add to the more realistic details. And you know, I'm slowing down here so I don't make it look funky around her nose. I want this petal to just kind of be overlapping her nose, something like that. So I'm just kind of slowing down in this area so I can get this where I want it. So just these little tips in through here. I will change my brush stroke in a second, but just getting these little edges here. And of course you could certainly use a smaller brush if for these little edges, if that helped, if that was gonna ease in your painting process. And then just again bringing these up towards that center, or towards that stem, so that again starts that process of the detail making of the petals and helping to show the veins in the petals and all that good stuff, because the paint can be transparent and it'll start that stripy process for you. And then I'm going to just use this pink for the base coat of my ribbon as well. So just the pink is going on my brush, or staying on my brush, and coloring in this whole section. And then once we've got this done, I gotta find a clean piece of pink paint here. My palette is getting dirty really fast today. Once I've got this done, I am going to be using this same brush for the next step. I guess it's okay if my paint is a little dirty. Sometimes when you're going fast like this, I get a really messy palette, and it's like, but I want pink, and I've got brown all in my little paint down there, but that's okay. And then once I've got this done, again, I'm going to be using this same brush for the next step. So you can just wash it and dry it and get ready. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to be painting, I'm going to call them shadows on the face. I'm going to be using my medium brush. What this is, I'm kind of minimalizing the name of it into shadows, but what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be putting, in essence, a second coat on the skin, including the darker areas, which would be shadows created by the contours of the face. What I mean by that is she's going to have a cute little girl, you know, kind of full cheek. So I'm going to have a shadow kind of underneath that cheek to tell the viewer where that cheek is. I'm going to have shadow or darkness underneath her face onto her neck, which is going to show the contour of her neck and show that there's darkness under there. We're also going to use these little shadows to create the eye socket where the eye is going to go, the little nostril hole, and also kind of the shape of the nostril. It's going to help us to kind of make these lips a little bit fuller and tell us exactly where they are. And then we'll put a little bit of shadow kind of connecting the face to where the hair is going to overlap it. I'm using my medium brush. The colors that I'm going to use are my skin tone and brown. And if I need to or want to go into any other colors, I certainly will. And just know as we go through this process, we are going to be adding additional steps to the skin later on. This is just really kind of building the foundation where we want all of our features to be and to tell the contour of the face. So I'm going to start with a little bit of brown and my skin tone on my brush at the same time. So I have about equal parts of both. I'm going to kind of give myself a darker area underneath this neck. So in through here, I've just got both of these colors on my brush to create this dark area underneath the neck. I also, as I'm doing this, I'm thinking, where do I want this cheek to kind of go? So if this is kind of like the jawline in through here, I can almost give myself a nice big curve kind of going up this cheek, and maybe let me put some more paint on my brush so we can actually see it, and kind of right near that nose. So it'll kind of connect to that nostril or kind of in the nostril area, something like this. So this almost rides along that initial curve that we had given the whole face earlier. And then I'm just going to kind of blend this out underneath this chin. So again, this is both the brown and the skin tone on my brush at the same time, just kind of getting this to blend into what's going to be the chin. I'm going to pick up some of my skin tone just to get this to blend nicely with a little bit brighter on the chin itself. And we've just created this under, like the under area of her neck. I'm going to make this a little bit darker down here, so I'm going to pick up a little bit more brown on my brush to just get this a little bit darker and to blend it out over here to this left-hand side, because I want the whole neck to be seemingly darker than anywhere kind of else on the face, because I feel it would be the darkest down in through here. So just getting that to blend a little bit. There we go. Now what I'm going to do, I have very little bit of paint on my brush. I'm going to just use that tiny bit of paint on the tip of my brush to tell myself, or to show myself how far I want these lips to go. So if this is the top lip, I'm going to consider the top lip to kind of be a little shadowed or darker than the bottom lip. So I'm just going to kind of bring this back in a downward diagonal motion like that. And then if on this hump, I think one of the biggest things with making lips is the lips, they kind of have the lip color and then part skin. So you don't want to bring the lip all the way down to this dent in through here. It's kind of about midway up this round part. So something like this, and then just bring this in through here. So I'm just kind of giving myself a little bit of a line to tell myself where I want those lips to go. I'm picking up some of my skin color just to make sure I have, oh, she's going to have a little bit bigger lip than I had anticipated. There we go. That's what happens. I'd rather make it a little bit bigger than to back it off. So that's going to be the top lip, and that's going to be the bottom lip. That works out well for me. And then I'm just going to pick up more of my skin tone to make sure that I've got a good second coat on the entire face. So that's another purpose of this step, is to just make sure I have a nice second coat whereby building my highlights after this will be a nice, easy process. I'm just picking up a little bit more brown to make sure this is as dark as I want it to go down in through here. And I'll probably add a little bit more darkness down here in my final touches, but this is just going to get me started. Picking up a teeny bit more brown on the tip of my brush to tell myself where I want the nostril to be. So I'm going to go, well, if this is the tip of my nose, I'm going to just kind of give myself a little kind of mark like that. And then I'm going to bring a little curve like this. That's going to give me that under little part of the nose. I am wiping my brush off on my paper towel very frequently just to make sure that I don't have too much paint on my brush. And of course, you could be using a smaller brush as well. Wherever your comfort zone is where you want to take this, or to, you know, whatever brush is comfortable for you to use. So that's looking pretty good. We're going to put more shadow on her nose in a little while from the flower, but I just picked up more of my skin tone to make sure that this is all blended in. Make sure this upper lip, or the space between the nose and the mouth has the nose and the mouth has a second coat. And again, that's what I'm doing right now. I'm putting a second coat on as well of the regular skin color, as well as adding those contour shadows to tell me where all this stuff is happening. I'm going to have the eye in this area, so I'm going to put my eye socket in through there, picking up a little bit of brown on my dirty brush. And really what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of rub in this kind of area where I want that eye to sit, so somewhere in through here. And this is going to give me some great shadow from where the eye dips in. We'll put, you know, she's going to have her eye on there as well, but this is just going to kind of get us started where we want it on the face. And then you could even bring a little shadow down that side of the nose, something like that. And then I want to put some a darker area where I'm going to have maybe her eyebrow. So I'm just going to put a little bit of brown in this area just to kind of say, okay, maybe this is going to be extra dark because her eyebrow is going to go in through here. I want it to pull past her eye. So something like that. I'm picking up more of my skin tone right now to make sure I have a good coverage everywhere on the skin. So now that I've got that kind of established, now I'm going to be doing a second coat on this cheek, and I'm going to get it to kind of blend into a little bit of a shadow where it meets the neck, so, or the hairline. So I'm going to just pick up my skin tone right now to give myself a second coat on the whole cheek in through here. Again, this is just going to give me a nice way to make sure that I have everything colored in a nice soft and filled type of a way. I'm going to get it to blend along the edges in a second here, but just giving myself that second coat in through here. Now I'm going to pick up and just get this little area in through here. I'm going to pick up my skin tone plus brown to give myself a little bit of a shadowy area as it's meeting this hairline. And again, I don't need to do much, just making sure I've got that transition from the regular skin tone into where it's going to meet that hairline, so something like that. And then I'm also going to kind of soften this edge a little bit, so skin tone plus a little bit of brown just gives me a softer edge in through here, so it doesn't look like we just have a line connecting those two areas. So skin tone plus brown to just soften this little line in through here. And then we're going to be using our small brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can do as many layers as you want. I just picked up a little bit more brown, get this to go just a smudge darker down in through here. And my skin tone. Once you've got this done, you can put this medium brush away. I'm going to be using my small brush for the next step, so you can just get ready. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to be painting the eye, nose, and mouth. I'm using my small brush. The colors that I'm going to use are brown, my skin tone, pink, yellow, and white, and black. How I'm going to be doing this is I'm going to be, in essence, kind of making a base coat for the eye, and we'll let that rest for a minute, and then we'll go do some strategic highlights and shadows on the nose. We'll put a little bit of color in the lips, then we'll put some eyelashes, and she'll magically have some pretty features by the time we're done. So what I'm going to first do is I'm going to start with my skin tone plus a little bit of white paint on my brush to put her eyelid in place. So I'm going to have this, if this is the dip in the bridge of my nose, I'm going to come a little bit to the left of that and just give myself a little bit of an arcing line, something like that, and then just pull it back towards this left hand side, picking up a little bit more of my skin tone right now to get this to blend in just a little bit. I'm going to have some deeper shadows to in the upper part of her eyelid up and through there. This is just going to give you the part where her eyeball would kind of make it bump out a little bit. So something like that works in through there, just giving a nice soft entry over into the left-hand side. Now what I'm going to do is I want to kind of deepen the tone right around her eye in through here. So I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of black paint just right on this left-hand or the right-hand side, right in through here, and then I'll just blend it out just a little bit, maybe with added a little bit of water on my brush just to blend this out just a little bit so it kind of gets a little bit deeper, darker in through that bridge. I'm picking up a little bit more brown right now to get it to go up into where her eyebrow is. And I didn't wash my brush, so I might have a touch of black on here. And I'm just kind of fading it up into that eyebrow and kind of getting it to go a little bit darker up in this region in through here to give the whole eye socket a little bit more shape. I want to add a little bit of a kind of a reddish or a rusty type of a tone. So I'm going to pre-mix myself a little kind of pinky reddish tone, rusty tone, which is right here. How I got to this was I used a lot of brown and pink and a touch of yellow. So I'm in essence kind of adding almost an orange, which is the pink and the yellow, into my brown. You could use a little bit of white as well to if you wanted it lighter, but this is going to give me like a nice rusty type of a tone. Around features, you're going to find a little bit more blood flow, so you'll have a little bit more of these reddish type tones. So I'm just kind of incorporating that around the eyelid in through here. I'll put some underneath where we're going to see the eyelashes are going to appear, maybe in this little shadowy area over in through here. I'm going to use this same color when I work around the lips as well, and then that way that'll make it look nice and natural. Maybe a little bit more on her eyelid over here. So I'm digging this color, so it's making it look nice and natural for me. So just going to keep adding a little bit in through there. That's looking pretty. So now while this is kind of resting, I don't want to overpaint it. I'm just going to kind of let it dry for a minute. We're going to go work on the nose a bit. I'm going to pick up some of that custom rust color. I'm going to put a little bit of that underneath the nose in through here, just kind of a little bit to get it to rub in and give myself a little bit more of a natural tone. I'm going to put it on the lips as well. So I'm a little bit more heavy-handed with it on the lip right now, so it can be more of a vibrant type of a color to resemble the color of a natural lip, something like that. You could even put a touch on the top. The top one's going to get pretty shadowed in a minute here. I'm going to also pull a little bit of this up on this, in this little crease right in through here, just a little bit up the side of that face, right in through there. And then I think maybe just a little bit more underneath the nose up in through here. I'm now going to pick up a touch of black paint on my brush. So wipe my brush off, pick up a tiny bit of black paint, give a little bit darker mark in that nostril. I'm also going to make this upper lip have a little bit more shadow on the bottom side of it. So this way it speaks to the vibrancy of the sunlight. So the sunlight, I want it to really look like there's a lot of sunlight in our composition. So adding these dark contrasting colors, even if you do it in such a minimalistic kind of way, it's going to make the atmosphere look brighter if we've got some good contrasting shadows and highlights throughout it. So that's looking pretty good. I'm thinking maybe a little bit darker underneath her nose in through here. Before I start adding the highlights, I want to make sure I've got all these little kind of shadows in where I want them. That's looking pretty good. Bring it just a little bit shadowed up in through there. All right, that's looking pretty good. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start adding my my more dominant highlights. So I'm going to put a little bit more brightness on her eyelid. So I'm going to pick a little bit, I picked up a touch of white, and I want this to kind of go on the part of the eyelid that I feel would kind of pop out the most, somewhere in through there. And then I'm going to pick up that custom rusty color with a little bit of white just to get this to almost have like a little pinky hue to it in through here, We'll give her some pretty eyelashes in a minute, but we're just starting with a nice vibrant eyelid in through there. I'm going to use the same color combination, the white and that rust color, to give myself a little bright highlight on the bridge of her nose. So this is going to speak to the sun being over on the other side, or maybe catching a little bit of the sun rays underneath that flower. I'm picking up some of my skin tone just to get these to blend in a little bit in through here. And then I might pick up a little bit more lightness in a second. I want a nice shadow underneath the flower too, but I'm just concentrating on her skin right now. There we go. I'm going to put a little highlight on her nose. So this is going to be white. I'm going to start with just white right in through here. Very little bit. Just kind of put it in the brightest spot that you want to for that nostril to pop out. And then you can just kind of work it around like this. I'm going to pick up some of my skin tone to get it to blend out like that. And if you have trouble blending these kind of areas, you can always, again, you can do multiple layers. You can, you don't always have to blend two colors together on the canvas. You can pre-mix yourself a distinct color to use as the highlight. I like blending on the canvas. It works well for my painting technique, but if you needed to pre-mix a color, I just added a little bit more white and my skin tone to my brush to get a little bit more highlight there. I'm going to put a little bit of this white and skin tone right on the this part of the face. So this little bump out part above the lip will have a little bit of volume to it. So something like this will work in through here. And then I'm going to add a little bit on her lip itself. I'm going in for some pink right now. So this is just my pink, getting a nice, pretty, young look to the lip. Now I'm picking up a touch of white, give myself a little sparkle on that lip, just so it looks like it's got a little bit of sunshine hitting it. And then I'm going to go ahead and do, I'm thinking that's pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and do the her eyelashes. So actually I'm going to pick up more of that rust color. I feel like I want a little bit more of this rusty, that custom rusty color that I created just underneath this eye. I feel like I want it kind of as a shadowy type of a tone underneath the eyelashes that I'm going to put in a second. So just something like that. There we go. All right, time for some eyelashes. I'm washing and drying my brush. I'm picking up some black paint with a little bit of water on my brush. So I'm going to go right from this eyelid, the bottom eyelid, and then just kind of pull up. I need more moisture on my brush. I don't want these to be too clunky looking. There we go. My brush is under control now. So I'm going to bring these, she's going to have lots of them. So we're just going to kind of bring them kind of down and out. You can really make them as long as you want. That's going to be a preference on your part, but I'm just going to kind of give her some, you know, I always feel like young people have the eyelashes us older people want. So she's going to get some long eyelashes because they always seem to be so nice and full when you're a youth. You know, they should just give these long eyelashes to all people, not just these little young people. So I'm just pulling out nice, long, full eyelashes. Again, you can have yours as long or as short as you want. I'm going to put a little bit of this black up in the eyebrow as well, just to give, again, some nice depth to all of her features and the stuff that's around the features. This is going to be hidden a little bit by her hair anyways, but I'm thinking that that's looking pretty good. And then I would just kind of probably sit back. I think I'm going to actually pick up a tiny bit of white paint also. I just picked up a tiny bit of white. I want a couple of little highlights in her eyelashes, so I just picked up a touch of white just to give her little twinkles in her eyelashes. Now I just picked up black, alternating between black and white on her eyelashes to give her this fullness to them. And then if you felt that you wanted to do anything further, she's looking adorable. I'm picking up a touch more white. Hold on. A little bit of white here. And I might as well, while I'm here, I'm going to put the shadow of the flower right on her nose. So I'm gonna now I washed my brush, I'm picking up a touch of brown paint. I might use black too in a second, but I wanna put this shadow while I'm here so I don't forget about it later of the flower right on the nose. And this is one of those steps where when you do a shadow like this, you know, if you really wanted it to be really aggressive, you could certainly almost go black with it, but I'm gonna probably just go with my brown. I might use a little bit of black in a second, especially where it's closer to the flower, but I'm thinking that this might work out pretty well. Make sure I got a nice darkness underneath her nose as well, and then a little bit of this shadow up underneath here as well. Make sure that this area looks like it's got a shadow as well. And then I'm going to let mine dry, and I'm going to reassess, see if I need to make any more highlights or shadows on her features. And then we're going to use our medium brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, oops, that was a little aggressive. Once you've got this done, you can put this small brush away, take out your medium brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're gonna do for the next step is we're gonna finish her face. So finish the skin on her face. It'll be predominantly her cheek and her chin. We'll make sure that it goes gradually into her neck. I need to do a little bit more work here, but I'm going to be using my medium brush. I'm going to be using my skin tone white and that peachy or the rusty color that we created. Maybe some brown, maybe some black, but I will certainly call them out as I use them. What I'm looking to do is just put a big, huge sunshine highlight on her cheek up in through here and make it gradually blend into her cheek down in through here. I'll put a little bit more of a highlight on her chin, maybe a little bit more work underneath her mouth as well, and then make sure that her neck is nice and blended a little bit more. I'm going to start up at her cheek. I'm going to put a little bit of white paint on my brush, and you don't need to have a lot of paint. And as I'm doing this, I'm consciously thinking about, okay, here's her cheek, here's the top part of her cheek, that's where I want it to be the brightest, but I want her cheek to kind of pop out. So I'm going to pull this highlight down kind of the center of her cheek, and that's going to allow that cheek to look like it's got shape to it, a form to it. And then I'm also going to be using that custom little rusty pinky color that we did to make sure that the color of the cheek blends into the areas that might have a little bit more blood flow to them. Or maybe there's a little, maybe she's got a little suntan. We could also use more of that color. Maybe it's a reflection from the flower and she's got pinky tones to her skin. So we'll have fun with this. But I'm going to start with white, and I'm going to put it right at the top of her cheek in through here. And then I'm going to start to blend it down, something like that. So I know her cheek would probably, kind of come up in through here, underneath her eye. And I'm just kind of rubbing it out so I have softer edges to it. I'm going to pick up some of my skin tone right now to get on my dirty brush to get these two areas to kind of blend in a little bit more, something like that. You could use a more firm brush too. A lot of times will use a bristle type of a brush to do this skin tone blending, but I wanted to show an application using this round brush to do it as well, so you can see how you can use multiple or different type of tools to accomplish the same thing. I'm bringing this towards, I just keep picking up my skin tone right now, towards where the cheek is going to meet that darker area that we did. And I like to use the side of my brush. So I'm kind of pushing my brush and just kind of scrubbing or scumbling it into the canvas. So you can see how it's taken on this lighter tone. And it'll be a little bit lighter when it's wet as well, simply because we've got it on a pretty dark base for the skin itself. I'm going to let this top area kind of rest for a minute before I add more layers on top of it. And while that's resting, I'm going to just kind of come down and work on this bottom portion of the cheek. So this is where I'm going to pick up my skin tone plus a little bit of that rusty, custom rusty color that we had created. So maybe we'll put a little bit of this down at the bottom of her cheek and through here. And again, these are the little kind of nuances that as you're doing skin, if you can get them to, get that skin to blend out and have different temperatures to it, warmer in the sunshine and maybe cooler as it's going into those shadows, that will help it look a little bit more realistic. I'm going to pick up a little bit more of my skin tone plus that peachy color to get maybe a little bit of that reddish hue underneath here, or the pinky hue underneath here, and just going to make sure I've got a nice good tone in through there. It's looking cute. I'm going to pick up now my skin tone plus a touch of white. I want to get a little bit more brightness on her chin in through here. So this is my skin tone plus white. So that's the color I'm using for my highlight. Of course, you could change up your highlight color as well if you'd like to. It's going to give her a little volume on that chin. Let me bring it back just a little bit more in through here. And again, this is a sunshiny day. There's lots of things that could be, you know, helping make certain areas of her face pop out a little bit more, putting a little bit more white in my skin tone on my brush. I feel like I want to amp up underneath her lip just a little bit in through here. There we go. And if you're going through this and it's feeling flat and you can't get that area to pop out the way that you want it, it's probably because there's not enough contrast, or you're just putting the highlight in a teeny tiny section when you should be pulling it around that object. So just knowing that, you know, in your head, what part of that person's body would be popping out the most. And when I think of a chin, it's got to be, you know, have some roundness to it. So I have to pull this highlight towards the left as well in order to give that that form to that part of the body. So that's looking pretty good. I'm going to finish up the neck before I go up to the face. So down here, I'm going to use brown and my skin color on my brush at the same time to just make sure that I've got this nice, it felt a little bit too streaky to me, so I want to give it a little bit softer of a look. So that was brown plus my skin tone, which is exactly what I did the first time. It just didn't, it wasn't blended as much as I wanted it to, and I want to make sure that it blends up into this little cheek area. Pick up a little bit more brown and just get these to kind of blend in. And another thing with the design that I have done for this little girl is she's going to have long hair that is going to cover a lot of this. So if you're, you know, learning how to do portraits and you're kind of petrified, as I was when I first started doing portraits, there's, you know, ways that you can avoid doing the whole thing. I just picked up black and brown on my dirty brush, and this is one of the ways, by doing an area where there's a lot of hair that could cover some of the skin elements. So that way you're not, you know, forced to make the entire thing super duper perfect, and it allows you to kind of learn in a slower pace as opposed to having to do that full-on perfect 100%, get every little crease and crevice, like I'm avoiding doing her ear. So that's you know, a way to start your learning process. And we're covering part of her cheek or part of here with her hair. So I'm going to wash and dry my brush. I want to go up and finish her cheek in through here. And I know I had black and brown on my brush. Well, hold on. Let me just blend this just a little bit more in through here. There we go. I know that didn't do much, but it did for my painterly eye. Wash and dry my brush. I'm going to go back up here with a little bit more white. I feel like that was a little, it's not blended well enough for me. So wash and dry my brush, put in a little bit more white in this area, and then I'm just going to kind of blend it out. And again, when you're doing this, you may not, like I didn't get it perfect on the first go around with this highlight. So I'm coming back and I'm doing another layer. And for me, skin looks the most natural when you have, you know, 42 different layers on it, because that to me, it makes natural looking skin. The more layers I put on it with the paint, the better it looks, the more natural it looks, because I look at my skin and I say, well, that's, you know, I've got so many color variations in my skin. I need to translate that in a painting if I want it to look realistic. I mean, and you don't have to make everything look realistic, but if you want it to have a lot of that lifelike aspect to it, for me, layering skin is the way to go, as opposed to just trying to do it on one shot. So you saw I just did this highlight twice, and I might even do it a third time once it dries. If it doesn't give me the volume that I want, if I want that cheek to be even fuller, I might come in with another pass on it. If if it looks too flat to me, I just kind of keep rubbing a little lighter layer on it, and then I keep doing that until I get it where I want. I just picked up a little bit more white, give her a little more sparkle on her chin in through here, and then we are going to be using this same brush for the next step. So you can fiddle with this all you want. Her forehead's going to be covered by hair. This area is going to be covered by hair. I think the main area that you want to get as smooth as you want it to be is kind of this cheek area in through here, and her facial features. And then you can, any other little tweaks you can do that you feel are necessary. I just picked up some of that little rusty color. So we're going to be using the same brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can wash it and dry it and get ready. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to be doing the base coat for the hair. I'm using my medium brush. The colors I'm using are black and brown. I'm going to have my little lady here having just long, dark hair. So I'm going to be using a very dark base, which is going to be my black and my brown. I'm going to first start by just giving myself a nice kind of clean outline right next to the hat with black paint. So I have black paint on my brush right now, and I'm just going right down this edge. And the reason why I'm choosing to just kind of give myself this clean outline is so it kind of ensures that I have a nice dark shadowy type of effect right next to this hat. Again, I'm doing it to speak to the really bright sunshine that is I want this painting to exude. So I'm just going right up to my hat, and if you miss a couple of spots, that's fine, because we still have to finish our hat too. So now that I've got that in place, I want to paint the rest of the hair in a strategic way. So she's got her head leaned back. She's going to have some little bangs coming off of this area, but I want her hair to kind of cross over her face in certain areas as well. So I'm going to be giving myself almost like these little, strands of hair coming past this point as well. So from here on out, I'm going to be using black and brown on my brush at the same time. So this is going to give me some areas that are going to look more brown or more black. So later when I go to put my my highlights on, I'll have a couple of different tones that I've already have started that will help me make it look a little bit more natural. So I'm using a directional brush stroke, which means I'm forcing my brush to go in a specific direction, and I'm just going to have her hair kind of wavy, and gravity is taking over. Her head's back, so her hair would naturally be kind of coming straight down. So I'm getting to the part where I'm going to start crossing over into her face. So I'm going to just slow down a little bit. I just added a touch of water to my brush as well, so I can get more individual type of brush strokes. I have to hide this separation, so you do not want to see any of your sky through there. So you've got to make a concerted effort to make sure hair crosses over that one spot, but you also want to make sure it doesn't look too linear, like that's just her face and this is her hair. So if you want it to look nice and natural, this is where you're going to pull quite a bit of her hair over her skin. And that's going to make it look like she's got lots of volume to her hair. She's got, you know, as much hair as you want her to have. She can come way out into her face. I'm bringing mine, if this is where her eye is, I'm going to bring mine, you know, probably midway between that and the hairline that I had created. So this way it's going to, I'm going to see lots of peekaboo spots of her skin underneath there. And that's going to help it look, again, even more natural. So now that I'm getting kind of up towards her bangs, I'm going to slow down again because I want these to have a definite curve to them. So I'm going to just kind of bring this up and over like this. And again, I don't want it to look like she has a super clean haircut right in through here. So I'm going to pull some of those pieces of hair in front of her skin. I'm again using my directional brush stroke so you can see it's kind of coming in a curved way as if those bangs are going right around her head, and then they'll kind of drop down a little bit. And I just keep alternating black and brown, make sure I've got this little transition area so we can't see where the that stopping point was between the hair and the skin. And then I'm just going to pull out a couple of fun little flyaway pieces. They're not that flyaway, but they're definitely got a little bit of movement to them. And then I'm going to pull a little bit in front of her skin here. I need a little bit more moisture on my brush so I can get these littler pieces. And again, we're going to be doing another layer on this hair. So as you're going through this process, if you're saying, wow, that just doesn't look the way I had intended it to, know that we've got another step that will help make this hair look a little bit more natural. I'm actually going to bring this pretty far down, like over her eyebrow a little bit. You can even bring it over her eyelid if you wanted to. I feel like I want to bring a couple of pieces kind of just over in this direction. So I feel it and want to do it, so I'm going to do it. And then I'm just gonna put as much in through here as I want, maybe a couple longer pieces. So don't be afraid, you know, don't be afraid to you know, explore some nice long pieces. And again, we'll be putting additional, I'm just putting my head back and see if I've got as much on here as I want, maybe a little bit more down on this neck area. And then once you've got this done, we're going to be using this same brush for the next step. So you can just wash it and dry it and get ready. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish the hat. I'm using my medium brush. The colors that I'm using are brown, black, white, pink, blue, and my custom hat tan color that I can't remember what I called, so we're just going to call it hat tan. Golden tan, yellowy tan, whatever I called it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be adding some strategic shadows. So we're going to have a nice shadow in through here. We'll have a little shadow up in through here. We're going to have some shadows back on the back side of the head part of the hat, this top part. We'll have some shadows on the ribbon in through here. And then we're going to have lots of highlights. So highlight from sunshine up in through here, the top, on the rim. So it's going to be a lot of fun, and we're going to have a lot of dimension. I'm using a very carefree brush stroke. I'm not going for any little woven detail on my hat. I just want it to be bright at the top and on the rim, and then dark where I feel it would dip in a little bit. So I'm going to start with the brown part of the hat first, and then we'll do the ribbon. I'm going to put a tiny bit of black and brown on my brush at the same time. I'm going to color in this little section up here because that's the inside of the hat, so we need that to be pretty darn dark. So I just color that in. That's no tricky part there. Just, I don't know why it's taking me so long to do it. There we go. Then I'm going to use this dark color right in the crease right in through here. So this is black and brown on my brush, giving myself a real dark kind of shadowy area in through there. Keep picking up my black and brown. I want to kind of underline this ribbon so it looks like the ribbon's kind of casting a shadow on the other part of the hat, something like that. I'm going to just wipe my brush off on my paper towel. I'm picking up brown paint like that, and then with my dirty brush I'm going to pick up that hat color and finish this little section in through here. So I just wanted a second coat, and I wanted it to be pretty dark in through here and then a little shadow underneath that ribbon. I guess I just went through a little wet paint there. That's all right. Now what I'm going to do with my dirty brush, I'm just going to pick up some brown paint. I'm going to do this kind of back side of this part of the hat with a little bit of brown and maybe a little bit underneath that top part as well. So this is my dirty brush. I just picked up brown paint, and I'm kind of using a directional brush stroke in order to tell the shape of the hat, how it goes around the head. So I'm using a little bit of a curve in through there, picking up a touch more brown just to get up in this little crevice up in through here. Maybe this part of the hat is casting a little bit of a shadow on this part of the hat. And then what I'm going to do, once I get that in, I'm going to pick up my hat tan and just kind of on my dirty brush finish out this little section in through here, making sure I've got a second coat on the whole part, this whole part of the hat, so it doesn't look like I've missed any spots. That's looking pretty good. I'm going to hit the top with a highlight in a minute, so I'm not going to pay much attention to that. I'm going to pick up, I just wiped my brush off on my paper towel. I'm picking up a little bit more brown. I want to put a touch of brown down at the bottom of this rim in through here. Again, I wanted to speak to the sunshine, so I need to put shadows kind of as many places as I can think of. So I feel like if this rim kind of pulls out like this or kind of bumps out, that maybe there'd be a little shadow where it's meeting her head or her, the bottom part of this rim. So I'm going to just put a little bit of brown in through there like that, and maybe a touch up in through here. So this is just brown paint on my dirty brush. It's a little bit as this, rim kind of flips over like that. And then I'm going to pick up my, maybe a touch in there too. Anywhere I can think of, maybe right in here too. Yeah, there we go. Now I'm going to pick up on my dirty brush my hat tan and make sure that I've got a second coat on here. And again, my brush is dirty, so I've got the remnants of some of that brown on there. And in a minute, I will put a little highlight on here. But because the type of hat or the color of the hat that I'm choosing to do is kind of like that canvas wickery type of color, I can get away with this really carefree brush stroke that I'm using. I'm going to put a nice highlight on there in a minute, but right now just going to make sure that I have a good second coat in through here. So it was just a fun type style of hat to choose to do for this, because I knew we were going to be spending a good amount of time on that face. And when you're doing paintings like this, you can certainly put the same type of hyper detail from one area to the next. But if you want, let's say, the face and this flower to be the focal point, everywhere else you can kind of do in a little bit more carefree or out of focus type of way to take the attention off of these things and bring it to here. So that's kind of what I was doing with the hat. So now I'm going to pick up my hat tan plus white on my brush to give myself some nice highlight. So I try not to put my hand in wet paint. Got a nice highlight up towards the top in through here, on the top of the hat in through here, and then I'm going to just pull it back in the direction that I feel the curve of that hat would be. So I'm going to pull it kind of like that. And I don't want my paint to look too dry or skippy, so I'm going to pick up just a little bit more of my hat tan plus white and just trying to keep the whitest or the lightest part up towards the top. That looks pretty good. And then I'm going to do the same thing up here. So I'm picking up a good amount of white right now so I can get a nice bright highlight right up at the tippy top of that hat and pulling it down in this kind of curved manner over on this left hand side. I just extended my hat a bit. It's fine. The hat can grow. The hats can be very big, especially beach hats. Beach hats can be super duper big. So if your hat grows really big, that's all right. Just making sure this goes the way that I want. Now I'm going to pick up my hat tan plus white to give a nice kind of highlight here, but not maybe as light as that tippy top part. I might even go up on that tippy top part and put more white in a minute, but just want to make sure that I've got everywhere as light as I want. I want a nice highlight in through here to make that look like it's maybe popping out a little bit more, catching a little bit more of the sunshine. So again, this is white plus my tan to get that on in through there, and then making sure that I've got this edge in through here. So again, white plus my tan, making sure that edge overlaps the shaded area like that. That looks pretty good. And then I'm going to pick up a little bit of white. I feel like I want that tippy top to be just a bit brighter, and then we'll hit the ribbon. So I'm going to wash and dry my brush once I've got this on here. That looks pretty good. She's got a fancy beach hat on. I guess you don't need to blend it with your finger. Sometimes when you're painting, you don't realize that how much you use your fingers, how much you use other tools that you weren't really expecting to use. Yeah, there we go. That wanted a nice extra highlight up and through there. So I'm going to wash and dry my brush now, and I'm going to do a similar act in through here. So I'm going to start with just brown. And I could use a little bit of black, and I might in a minute, but I'm going to start with brown to get this shadow on in through here, right behind the rim of the hat, and then I'm going to pull it in the direction of my ribbon. So something like this will work out. And I want my ribbon to kind of emulate the colors that I'm putting in my flower, and I'm going to be having blue in my flower as well. So right now I'm going to pick up blue and pink on my dirty brush, and I'm going to start kind of almost striping this. It's going to look kind of purpley by the time I'm done, because the pink and the blue is going to make this beautiful purple color. I do want to make sure that I bring this ribbon all the way up to that shadowy area. So you want to close off any visible gaps between one section to the next. So I'm just kind of slowing down, make sure I've got that fully covered, and put as much paint on it as you want. This is one of, again, a very fun paint application where we don't have to be too terribly concerned about a quantity of paint or anything along that line. You just make it into whatever you want it to be. Picking up more blue and pink as I go through this process. I need to make sure that I've got it again all the way down in through here, making sure there's no gaps between my ribbon and the neighboring section. And then once I've got that, I'm going to put some white on my brush with maybe white and pink. Put a nice highlight up at the top part of my ribbon in through here. Again, just speaking to my sunshine. And my paint underneath is still wet, so this is all just blending in with one another, and it's creating this nice fabric looking effect, which is fun. And then once you've got this done, we're going to be using this same medium brush for the next step. So you can just wash it and dry it and get ready. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish her hair. I'm using my medium brush. The colors that I'm going to use are definitely brown and white, but I might also use a little bit of that skin tone and or the hat color. And the reason why is because those would make great highlight colors for dark brown hair. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with just some brown paint with a little bit of white on my brush. So mostly brown with just a little bit of white. And what this is going to do is I'm going to kind of lay in place where I want my highlights to go, and maybe the extra little pieces of hair that might be caught by a summer breeze. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to kind of add these curved type of marks up in the area where I feel like her bangs would kind of bump out the most. And when doing hair, it's not always terribly necessary to do every single piece of strand of hair individually, but when you want the hair to look like it's going in a certain direction, you definitely kind of want to take your time and give those directional brush strokes in order to explain to the viewer what is happening with that hair. And then you can go ahead and put, you know, individual type of pieces if you want to, or, you know, softer areas if you want to, but right now I'm using mostly brown with a little bit of white. I'm going to just kind of get this to fill in a little bit more in through here so it's not such a so stripy or black looking. So it's just more brown is what I'm doing, and I'm kind of pushing my brush a little bit harder so I have a wider kind of area of this color as opposed to, again, those single individual strands. And I'm just kind of making sure this looks the way that I want to. As I come down here, again, I know I still want some of those darker colors from that first layer to appear as shadowy areas, but I want to build some volume on here. So that's why right now I'm using, again, mostly brown with a little bit of white in order to get that thickness to the hair and give it you know, just more structure as opposed to it just laying kind of flat to her head. So this is working. I'm going to pick up a little bit of black because I feel like I've missed a couple little spots in through here. When I did my hat, I didn't get to it all the way. So that helps me do that. And now I'm going to pick up more brown just to fill in any of these little spots. That's looking pretty good. And now I'm going to start. Now that I've got my bangs kind of where I want them to go, I've got a couple of more solid pieces of hair down in through here. I get a little bit of a wave kind of appearance going also with that brown. Now I'm going to start adding some more distinct highlights. So I'm going to actually start with, I'm going to use a little bit of my hat color plus brown on my brush. So this is my hat tan, and I'm going to again go on those highlighted areas, something like this, and then just maybe pull this down a little bit in through here. So it's just these little tiny, almost like golden type of highlights. I want to pull some of these pieces of hair in front. So if you have some falling this way, if you pull some kind of going over it in a little bit different of a direction, that's going to make it look like the wind is kind of catching a couple of those pieces of hair. Just picked up a little bit more of the lighter tone, and you can see these little fun pieces coming in through here. I think I'm going to pick up some of that rust color that we used as her shadowy areas. So I just picked up a little bit of that. So when I'm doing this dark hair like this, there's so many, and sunshine, there's so many different tones and values that you can have for these highlighted notes. If you look at, you know, your own hair, you've got so many different shades and tones based on, you know, the way that the light is hitting it. I just picked up a little bit more white and brown. So that's, as I'm building these pretty little highlighted pieces, I know that I want her hair to read as brown, but I can add these other twinkles of different shimmering colors in order to say that maybe that piece of hair has a little reflective quality to it, or it's, you know, it's got a little, you know, golden hue to it. Right now I'm picking up my brown and white, but you could certainly use any of those other little tones to give you that extra little punch of, you know, of sunshine or of goldiness, or, you know, of a different hue of the hair. I just picked up white with a little bit of that rusty color, so you can see it's getting a little golden-y type of look to it. I don't want to go too much, so I'm just really kind of slowing down so I don't overpaint it. It's really easy to overpaint hair and just make it all go so solid, so I'm just kind of slowing down and making sure it's light where I want it to be, and that I've, you know, got it saying what I want it to say. I can also come back with a little bit of brown, which I may end up doing. I'm actually picking up brown right now on my dirty brush so I can get just these little peekaboo spots kind of popping out from underneath that hat. And if you do anything and you're like, that's just too much for me, just pick up black and you can, you know, make those little pieces of hair go black, and that will just kind of start you back fresh. I just picked up a little bit of white so I can have just a couple little fun twinkle highlights, a little bit more white on this tippy top. And then I would definitely, for me, I know that because I'm sitting so close to it right now, I may opt to do a couple more pieces on it, but I'm gonna want to set my head away from it to see if there's more that I want to do. But you can keep fiddling with your hair as much as you want, and then once you've got yours in a place that is comfortable for you, we're going to be using we're going to use the same brush for the next step. So you can just wash it and dry it and get ready. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to be finishing the stem and these little leaves. I'm going to be using my medium brush. The colors I'm using are yellow, white, green, black, and that rusty color that we created. What I'm in essence going to be doing is I want to put some real sunshine on this stem and on these little leaves. So I'm going to be adding some white and bright yellow pieces throughout them. So it's as if for the leaves, as if the sunshine is kind of illuminating the back of them, kind of backlighting them. And then on the stem, I'll put a lot of highlight on the top. I'll be putting a little bit of that rusty color throughout the stem as well to give it some nice earthiness and realistic vibe to it. And then we'll add some nice green and some shadows and stuff on the leaves that are on our side of the stem. So I'm going to first put some white paint on my brush, and I'm going to bring in some additional kind of little white pieces in this array of leaves in through here. These are in a minute going to turn bright yellow, but I'm putting them as white right now because my yellow is transparent and I want these to really be as yellow as I can get them. And in order to do that, I want to have a white base behind them. So if I want to have these pieces that look like they're being illuminated by the sun on the other side, this white base is really going to help me do that. So that's where I'm going to start. Maybe we've got a little piece coming over here that is somehow getting illuminated. I'm going to use that white also right now at the top of my stem. So just kind of lining the top of that with white. I'm going to soften the line into the stem in through here. So just kind of blending it into that green a little bit. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to wipe my brush off on my paper towel. I'm going to pick up some of that rusty color that we made for her face, which may have kind of a pinkish hue to it. But on top of this green, it's going to look nice and earthy and have a good tone to it, which is going to make, again, it look nice and natural. I can throw a little bit of this in some of these leaves as well. Something like that is going to help to, again, bring that earthiness right into the painting, make it look nice and natural. Something like that. Now I'm going to wash and dry my brush. I'm going to pick up a little bit of green paint, and I'm going to make sure I've got a second coat down the center of this stem. Now I'm picking up green and yellow, and I'm going to put a nice bright area on this stem in through here like that. I'm going to pick up a little bit more white just to blend this out at the top. There we go. That looks good to me. A little bit in through here, a little bit here, a little bit there, maybe a little bit more white on my dirty brush, maybe a little accent of a highlight over on this bottom side. My brush is wet. It's like sliding off my hand. Just going to wipe it off there. Just a little bit of lightness down at the bottom side. So when you're doing a sunshine type of scenery like this, the sun can have effects in so many different places. So I feel like the sun is, on the other side in some places. So you can have highlight on both sides of a particular object. So don't be afraid to really just have, I just picked up some of that rusty color again, really have that light shining on many different places. Now I'm going to wash and dry my brush. I'm going to put some yellow on those white leaves. So washing and drying my brush, picking up yellow paint, and you can watch this magical yellow appear. So when you put it right on top of that white, man, it's going to be as yellow as it can be. Now to show you what the difference, if I take that yellow, I've got it on this white. If I put it on the green, you can hardly see it. So that white behind it is what made it so vibrant and really look like it's, these leaves are being hit by some sunshine, they're being backlit, and it's just causing a great effect to it. So now I'm going to pick up a little bit of green and black on my brush, hardly any black. You want to be careful not to overdo the black on this particular section because it'll turn everything black on you. So just go cautiously with it. So I've got mostly green with just a touch of black on my brush, and I'm just pulling up a couple of little dark shadowy pieces to give this a lot of volume. And that's all I'm going to do with my little stem. So I'm going to use the same brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, actually I'm going to just put some more white. Hold on, washing and drying my brush. I feel like I want to put a little bit of white just on tips of some of these. So that was just a little extra addition I felt would behoove me. Now I'm going to wash and dry my brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish our flower. I'm using my medium brush. The colors I'm using are white, blue, pink, and I might use a little brown too. I'm not quite sure yet, but I might. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first add these little tips of what would be petals on the other side that are being drenched by the sun. Similarly to how we did the little leaves up here, I'm going to pick a couple of tips of these little ones that are floating down here to put sunshine on them. So I'm picking up white paint. I feel like this little guy in through here, I could put a little bit of, I'll turn this one into a white one. So when I'm doing this, I'm watching the neighboring tip. So like I've got this little tip here. I want this to look like it's kind of sitting behind whatever petals I'm going to have on this side of the flower. So I'm watching like this tip here to make it make sense, and then this tip here to make it make sense. So you can kind of play with wherever you made your little lumps and bumps. I'm going to have the one that's on her nose closer on our side of the flower. So you could pick whatever ones are kind of corresponding next to that one to make these little white, these white edges. Again, this is going to make these petals look like they're backlit by the sun. So I'm just continuing to put white on here. And you might need a couple of layers in order to get it to be as white as you want it to be. Just thin layers will get it there faster than a really, I guess thin layers will get it there faster in my opinion. So then I'm going to do the same thing right in through here, and then just color that in. And again, if it doesn't cover fully the way that I want, I can just come back with another thin layer on top of it because they dry fast. And then I think I'm going to do this little guy in through here. So if I look at this one here, maybe this one's going to meet that one like that. And your formation is most likely not going to be exactly as mine, which is beautiful because it's going to make your flower look like your flower, not like my flower. And if your background behind your flower is 100% white in this area, then this method might not work for you. You might want to make yours just light pink as opposed to white, because white on white you're not going to be able to see. Or you could put like a little pink edge around them. So that's going to be a judgment call on your part. I'm going to put a little tiny one over here as well. I probably could use my small brush for this little one in through there. That looks pretty good. And then while that's drying, I have a feeling I'm probably going to hit another layer of that in a minute, but I definitely want to have a lot of lightness up at the top. So again, I just have white paint on my brush right now. I'm going to incorporate other colors in a minute, but right now I just want to start this white stuff because I know that, especially since I'm putting it on top of something else, it may need a couple of layers to it. So I want to start it first, and then if I need to amp it up after it dries, I certainly will do that. So just putting some at the top. I think I'm going to actually bring some down this left-hand side as well to make it look like this side it has some sunshine hitting it as well, similarly to how we did her little nose. So now that I've got that on there, I want to kind of delineate or explain to myself and the viewer what petals are what back here. I'm going to be using a combination of blue and pink for these petals, but I might use a little bit of brown too. I don't know. But let's start with blue and pink. So I've got blue and pink on my brush. I definitely want this top part to be pretty blue-ish. As I'm coming down here, now I'm saying, okay, what petal is what? If I want them to look kind of individual. So maybe this petal, I come down like this. Maybe this crosses into that petal. Maybe I get my edge of this petal over here. So you can use these colors to, in a kind of a stripy way, in order to tell the difference between one petal to the other. So maybe I've got this petal in through here, and I bring it up. I just keep picking up my pink and my blue right now. So maybe I've got a petal. I'm gonna get my hand out of the way in a second here. So maybe I've got a petal here, a petal here, and then maybe we've got another petal here, and then we've got these other petals in through here. So you can layer them. They don't all have to be, you know, one solid petal. They don't all have to be exactly the same color. Tulips come in such a wide variety, and they can really, like, I was seeing these beautiful pink purple ones, which inspired this one. They can really have almost like from one side of the tulip to the other can be completely different. So they're really neat flowers, and they come in so many different varieties of colors. I think on this right hand side, I'm actually going to go pink with purple and a little bit of brown. I want this right side to look a little bit more shadowed. So I mean pink, blue, and brown. I have pink, blue, and brown on my brush. Just on this right hand side, I kind of want this side to look a little more shadowed. So I just put that kind of darker version on there. And now that I've got my petals kind of really established, I'm going to get these little guys underneath here, a second coat, and then I'm going to go ahead and start finessing my highlights and shadows and stuff. So I know where my petals are now, and now that I've established that and I've got a second coat on all of them, I can really start to finesse my highlights and my shadows. It's looking pretty good. Maybe I don't need to do much more, but I'm going to wash and dry my brush. I'm going to do a second coat on these little highlighted parts, and then I'm just going to blend it into the petals themselves and call it. So I washed and dried my brush. I'm picking up more white. I'm just doing a second coat on these guys in here so I can get them as bright as I want them to be. And again, if you're struggling with yours getting really bright, or if you can't see it on top of your background, just leave the hint of a little pink outline, or you know, you could even put a little yellow outline to make it look like the sunshine has, you know, left its sunshiny glow mark. But I've got a little tiny bit of pink on the corners of those two, and that helps. And same thing here. I'm picking up a little bit more white to give myself this upper portion. I think I need to do something with where it's meeting the stem in through here. I just want to make sure that stem looks nice and connected. There we go. Just pull a little bit of that right in front of it. There we go. And then this highlight at the top, I definitely want it to look, look like it is, you know, merged into the colored part of the flower. So before this part dries, now I'm just going to pick up a little bit of pink and blue just to get it to blend a little bit with that particular section, so it's not just a white splotch on the painting. So just white, or picked up a little bit of blue and pink. And again, the color variation right now, I'm just going back and forth between white, blue, and pink. You don't need to designate any one area as a specific color. You can really have fun with whatever's kind of speaking to you. I think I want to put a little bit of highlight here. So again, I got white, blue, and pink. I'm making these little tips of the petals, maybe a little bit more sunshiny in through here. Maybe this one too. So you can, right now I'm just kind of doing another layer on them, and wherever I want it to be a little bit brighter, I can add a little bit more white. If I want it to be more blue, I can add a little bit more blue. Just getting it into a fully rendered petal. So if I feel that there's a spot that could use more paint, I'm just adding more paint. I'm feeling like I'm really close because I'm digging the way that it's looking right now. Maybe a little bit more pink on top, pink and blue on top of this back one over here, just to give it cohesion with the other petals. Even though it's got the brown in it to make it a little bit darker, I still want it to look like it belongs to the same flower, and that's looking pretty good. So I'm going to call it. If you want to do any additional tweaking to yours, feel free to do so. We're going to use our small brush for the next step, so you can just get ready. All right, so we are on to the final step. This is the final step of every painting, which is to sign it. So I typically sign mine in the bottom left or the bottom right. I'm going to be using my small brush. I think I'm going bottom right on this one with, I'm going to go blue paint. No, I'm going to go brown paint. Bottom right, brown paint. I like to sign mine with my initials, but you could certainly sign yours with your first name or the date or a symbol or whatever you'd like for your identifying mark to be is up to you, because it is your painting and you get to sign it however you would like. And that's going to conclude this painting. I hope you enjoyed the process. I hope you painted yourself a pretty summer portrait, and I look forward to painting and sipping with you again sometime.